news from the Chicago Blackhawks, and that is Luke Richardson out as head coach of your Chicago Blackhawks. I have to say this first. I'm a fan of Luke Richardson. I liked what he was able to do with the Hawks. This year, it's been a rough go. I will say that. He's been given a hard hand from the start of his Blackhawk tenure. And today, December 5th, 2024, Luke Richardson is out as head coach of your Chicago Blackhawks. I need to mention this. I was at last night's game against the Boston Bruins, and I was even saying, there's a system failure happening with this team. You could see it on the ice. That's also why I didn't do a review, because I had to drive back home, which is a 4.5 hour drive for me. So there's a reason why I didn't have a review out from last night's game. But also, I was at the game against the Blue Jackets on Sunday, and I was seeing a lot of similarities with what was going on yesterday against the Bruins. I said it in my last review when they played the Maple Leafs, that changes need to happen. Was I thinking a head coaching change in the middle of the season was going to occur? Probably not. Granted, I was kind of leaning towards a side where, yeah, probably a change behind the bench could work. But Kyle Davidson, he created this roster. He went out there in free agency, and it did not work. Tyler Bertuzzi has been bad. He's kind of picked it up in recent games, but he's been bad for the majority of the season. Teuvo Teravainen was great to start the season, but he's been very much of a non-factor after the first 6 games of the year. The only two free agent signings that have worked out has been Pat Maroon and Craig Smith, with Lucas Reichel centering them on that fourth line. I don't know what's going on. The line changes this year, yeah, I've been complaining about it. Connor Bedard has not had a consistent line all season. And maybe with who the Hawks have as interim head coach, changes like that can happen, where you can maybe see him put lines that maybe be consistent for the rest of the year. As I should mention, who the Hawks promoted to be interim head coach of your Chicago Blackhawks. And that's Rockford head coach Anders Sorensen. Anders getting promoted to become interim head coach for your Chicago Blackhawks. And Mark Eaton will take over charge down in Rockford. This is going to be interesting to see. There's only two players really on the current roster right now that has some, well, maybe three players, you could say. Reichel, Vlasic, and Soderblom really all have some form of long-term knowledge of playing under Sorensen, because they all spent more than a year in Rockford. Kaiser last year spent about 40 games down in Rockford. Not a long stint, but he did get to work with Sorensen at points last year. Bedard really hasn't worked with Sorensen, so we'll see what happens there. And it's an interesting time. This is a transition period for the Hawks, as they now have to search for yet again another head coach for your Chicago Blackhawks. Because could Sorensen manage to do well as a head coach in Chicago? Maybe. But I don't know what's going to happen. There's experienced head coaches that probably should take over in Chicago. The Hawks have not hired an experienced head coach since, I will say it, Joel Quenneville. Because Luke Richardson was this assistant coach in Montreal, New York, and an AHL coach. Then we had Jeremy Colleton. Yeah, he was the only a head coach in Rockford for one season, and they fired Joel Quenneville for uh to promote Colleton as head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. Quenneville took over from Dennis Savard. This is how it's been going. The Hawks are going to have to find some ways. I should also mention previous interim coach who was interim coach from Jeremy Colleton, Derek King. He's been an assistant coach for Luke Richardson. He's going to remain as the assistant coach for the Hawks. So he's not going to be back as interim in Chicago because he was the interim before. I was wondering what could have happened there. I don't know what's going to happen. This kind of is on Kyle Davidson in a way. He created this roster. He needs to fix it. I want to see some more transparency from the front office in trying to sell. We are trying to do something here. Yes, this is a rebuild. Yes, it sucks to see someone get fired right now, like Luke Richardson. I don't think he kind of deserves it, but there are factors that you can say he does deserve to be fired, such as the line combinations every night, um, Connor Bedard's regression from his rookie season to this year. And you don't want to see a slumping Connor Bedard because he is the face and future of the National Hockey League. So there's going to be something with this team. Will it be a more of a jump? I don't know. I want to know, we'll see how this team rolls, what happens their next game. It's going to be Saturday against Winnipeg on an afternoon. Winnipeg's been scuffling as of late. Granted, they're one of the best teams in hockey, so it's going to be an interesting test for the Hawks with a new coach behind the bench. Will there be line combos that can work? Maybe a reuniting of the Foligno Bedard Kurashev line or Foligno Bedard Teravainen line, which worked for the first few games, and then Richardson changed it up, and we really haven't seen that since. Will there be line combos that he just keeps together from the previous game to just show, hey, I'm just here trying to help you guys out, change some morale in this locker room? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on Luke Richardson being fired and Anders Sorensen being promoted to interim coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. Or if there's any other moments from the games that you see that maybe I haven't even talked about that, yeah, Richardson probably should have been fired for. I'm going to say this: line combos, Bedard's regression, and maybe the lack of drive after scoring a goal. Because it seems like once they score a goal, as of recent weeks, they fall apart and give up a goal. This is going to be an interesting time period change for the Hawks as well. We're seeing another coach fired in this rebuild. Well, first coach fired in this rebuild because technically Luke Richardson was the first coach in this rebuild under Davidson, so I should mention that. I just want to know what your thoughts were. Thank you for watching the broadcast. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I do want to say thank you to Joseph, who I met at the game last night in the United Center, who's a subscriber. Anytime you guys see me at the United Center, just let me know and say hi. I'm willing to say hi to you guys. But this is some interesting news by the Chicago Blackhawks and what happened. I want to know where you guys are at with the Blackhawks and what you think. Because I know the fan base right now is angry because they can't watch the games on TV. especially last night. I saw the fiascos going on Twitter about that. Um, and it's just all around what you guys are thinking is going on with this team. So thank you, and most of all, let's go Hawks.